Meeting of the Planning Commission for Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. I will open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Fitzer?
Here.
Mr. Harrell?
Here.
Mr. Colbert?
Here.
Mr. Cusero?
Here.
Mr. Nushai? Ms. Redmond?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Solomon?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of agenda. That's the approval of the agenda we have in front of us. Anybody want to make any changes, add anything to it? Or are we happy with it? Okay, if no changes, I will approve it, and we'll move on. Agenda item number 5 is approval of the regular meeting minutes from May 23rd, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 23rd,
Yep.
2023.
Second.
And motion support. Anybody want any changes? Nothing. Can I have roll call on that, please?
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Mr. Colbert?
Yes.
Mr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion, items that are not on this agenda. Seeing no one from the public, and no one wishing to sign in, I assume. Okay, then I will close public discussion. And we'll move right along to agenda item number 7, which is review of the site plan for 650 North Rochester Road.
Real quick, I spoke to the applicant today, and he should be here. So I don't know if you guys want to give the opportunity for Joe to present the updated site plan, and hopefully by that time the applicant is here. So.
Yeah, we'll just transpose 7 and 8 then. We'll move on with agenda item number 8, which is the master plan, public engagement discussion.
Okay, and I guess we can pause that if the applicant arrives.
Right.
Okay. So, tonight, as far as the master plan is concerned, we're kind of planning to plan. We're going to be discussing the public input phase of the. It's not really a phase because it goes through the whole process, but the initial public input. We're going to have a lot of opportunities for people to chime in during this planning process, and I wanted to talk to you up front during this process about what it is you'd like to hear from the public. What are the most burning questions in your minds about each of these various modules that we're going to be working on this plan. So I included a memo in there that outlines very briefly all the modules, and I also talked about some of the types of questions that we can ask. And I'm going to try to get myself up on the screen in a second because I wanted to show you kind of a dummy of the website that we're going to be using to ask a lot of these questions. Just got to find the login. I always seem to misplace it. There it is. But while I'm doing that, I can talk about some of the types of questions that we can ask using the platform that we've got. And how we might use them, because we've got, you have your typical like multiple choice question. Oh, this is the applicant here. Do we want to do the applicant's agenda item here? Do we want to move back to item 7? Or do we want to keep going with this?
Oh, you sir?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's move back then, and we'll get back to you, Joe.
Okay, all right, that sounds fine to me. So I'll shift gears here.
So we're moving back to the review of the site plan for 650 North Rochester Road.
Yes. All right. Okay. I'm in the meeting now too, so let's
Double check, see if it works. Yep, it does. Yep.
make sure I'm muted. Okay. All right, so 650 North Rochester. We did receive some revised plans for this. Went through them. Couple of items still in bold in this letter here, but we're a lot closer than we were last time. So, kind of moving straight to the items that we're calling attention to here. Under screening, we didn't see the addition of a note about the repair of the rear wall, so we're calling that out as something that needs to be added to the plan. For landscaping, there's a couple of Japanese maples in the landscaping, but one of those trees is supposed to be a canopy tree, so we'd like to see one of those swapped with a different species. The one that's furthest from the building would be the logical one to swap. And then as for lighting, we've got notes about shielded fixtures. That's actually an improvement over the fixtures that are on the building right now, which aren't shielded. But we do still need a photometric plan, so the lighting manufacturer that they are getting their fixtures from will provide that. And they need to provide that to us for us to review to make sure that the light values at the property lines are not exceeding our ordinance. So those are the few remaining notes on the plan, and I'll let the applicant speak if he has anything to say. And if you got any questions for me, fire away.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
The applicant like to address us here?
Good evening. The only questions I have are what was brought up with the trees. The tree in front between us and the neighbor. You're saying that has to be removed, or
No, it's the ones that you're planting.
we can't have two Japanese maples?
Yeah, there's one, you can do a Japanese maple as an ornamental, but there has to be a canopy tree, that's what's required.
Okay,
So one of those Japanese maples needs to be swapped out for a larger species, essentially.
Kind of destroys a little of the symmetry of it. Having two Japanese maples looks
Yeah.
symmetrical to me, but now you're going to have to put a shade tree in apparently.
sure.
Not necessarily there, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a big
Right.
lawn in
Yeah,
front,
small
so that's why I
area.
wanted to keep a small tree, and we don't want it to get too high where it might cover the sign.
Right.
Or the address on, either on, the sign or the address on the north and south side. I'm not sure if the tree is even on our property between Gill's next door. There's a tree out by the road. We'd almost prefer to take that down. If it's on our property and maybe plant something else, we could do a maple or something, but,
Yeah, that could be discussed with the neighbor.
Are we
Yeah.
are we requiring a shade tree to be put in? Even though, as he says, it'll block some signage problems? Is that a city requirement or?
It's one of the street, yeah, we have a street tree requirement, so it does require a canopy tree there. So,
we would probably try and put it at
That's what-
the extreme end.
Right.
Yeah.
Between
which
us
is
and
fine.
Gill's, way to the end, just, um, now, is there any requirement to height of the sapling, if you will?
It goes in at, I believe, 2.5 inches DBH, which your nursery should be able to accommodate.
Mm.
Right, and then maybe.
I just wonder if it's a, you know, a seedling or if it's something that's gotta be.
larger than that.
Okay. And we are addressing the wall. We're going for repair first, and if not, it'll have to be cut out and a section repaired
I
or
recall you
re-poured.
saying that last time, it's just.
But it,
the note
it's,
gets
okay, I'll make sure that gets put on the site plan. And the lighting that's on, the existing lighting is not to code, you're saying?
Right.
It's pretty
yeah.
bright.
What you're talking about is shielding it on your plan, on the notes on your plan talk about shielding it, which is what needs to be done. So I'm sure it's gonna be a lot more compliant than it is now.
Well, there's nothing in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I thought we were talking about, because we've got residential back there. Now, this faces towards a business that's closed at night, and they're not real pretty by any means. But what you're saying, none of those security lights, because it's completely lit.
Right, yeah, that's not, it's
facing
not
north.
shielded, it's not the code, yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's the one that's before.
And I'll look to see what the wattage requirements and, now is it possible to run conduit along the wall and then have a light that faces back towards the building that'll light up the lot, but it will actually back up to the residential on the east and south sides?
I mean, shining the light away from the residential.
Shining
from-
it towards the building instead of the building, because it's gonna be tough, it's tall.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be tough not to bother the neighbors, and I'd certainly like to do something to accommodate them and have it face away from them. And that could be a riser off the wall, possibly. I'm not sure if that meets code, or,
Yeah,
we'd run conduit on the inside of the wall in the lot, take it up, and then and we wouldn't have to go up very far, a few feet maybe. And then face back towards the parking lot in the building.
I have to look at the lighting standards for how that would work. You'd have to have shielding on the house side.
Mm-hmm.
Does the building department confirm that for us, that lighting is installed, that it's properly,
Right, yeah,
Done.
that's part of your final inspections.
right?
Because it's pretty hard to shield the houses that are to the east. You know, it's gonna shine. That's why I'm saying if we could, you know, even do two lights in the back, on the back wall, on the east side and the north side, face towards the building. We could even shield the sides of that, but then it faces away. And I don't care where we put the lights, I just don't wanna bother the neighbors.
Right.
Well, and a lot of the shielding comes in the design. I do think our lighting ordinance has like examples of
Okay.
certain design, right, Joe?
We've got some that we could show, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that we can probably. Is there anything, I like your colors. You've updated your colors.
The gray?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Is there anything else, like anything new on the site plan that you want to share with us?
Other than, you know, just doing boxwoods in the front, taking everything out, we are taking the sign down below grade and the grass island, as I call it. We're taking that out and just having grass there, because again, it's a small lawn. And we'll, can we still put 2 Japanese maples if we put a third that, okay?
Absolutely.
Because it kind of be nice to
Yeah. It's a
have that
good-
together, and then, you know, we're trying to get the type that only gets to 9 or 10 feet,
Yeah,
and then bows out like an umbrella. It's pretty tree, so.
yeah. And Joe, so we don't have a proportion per, green space, because that is, like he said, that is a small green space on that lot
In
for.
the industrial district, we don't, no.
And there's not a way to get a variance on anything like that, because it does seem like a small green space to put so much tree, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty burdensome to go through a process for a variance. It's probably cheaper and easier to plant the tree.
Yeah.
to be
Is that-
And
honest.
we
okay.
would
Yeah.
literally do it at the extreme end of the building if we have to do it there.
Yeah,
right where the fence comes up to the building, it will be to the
Back-
extreme.
in the back part, you
Yeah,
mean? Oh.
north side. I'm sorry, south side.
All the way toward the southern property line is where.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd,
Okay.
you know, try and get it away
If you
from the
did
front of the
something
building.
columnar, it wouldn't block that very much.
And somewhere in our ordinances, I think the applicant is, when they plant a tree, they're responsible to make sure that the tree is watered and it survives, right?
Yeah, they have to.
If it
Oh,
dies,
it's gotta live?
oh yeah, it's gotta live, yeah. If it dies, you have to replace it, yeah.
Yeah, if you
I won't be in
planted a tree
charge of
3 weeks
that.
ago and haven't watered it, it's probably
Yeah.
not survived.
It's an ordinance for a reason, though, right?
And you've seen
Yeah.
dead trees.
Yeah.
There's actually a sprinkling system in the front yard, so I don't know if it's operational for a tree or whatever, but we'll make sure.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for the applicant?
No.
I think we pretty much covered everything. You can handle the wall repair, the tree variety, and the lighting plan. That was the 3 outstanding items.
Joe, are you comfortable with doing a conditional approval at this point?
Yes, I am, yeah, we can review the lighting plan when it comes in, if they make that a condition of approval.
All right,
Okay.
want to do that?
Sure. Hold on, let me get the, okay, I make a motion to approve the site plan review of 650 North Rochester with the conditions of a site plan that shows a wall repair where the canopy tree will be planted in a review of the lighting plan. Did I cover everything? Good?
Second that.
You have support?
Yeah.
Support. Any other comments? Okay, then I'll ask for a roll call, please.
You want to do the roll?
Sure. Since I'm the only one here.
Mr. Harrow,
Yes.
Mr. Colbert,
Yes.
Mr. Kucera,
Yes.
Ms. Redmond, Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Solomon,
Yes.
and Mr. Fitzer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move back to agenda item number 8, which is the master plan public engagement discussion.
Okay. Taking notes here to make sure I got everything. Right, so, as I was saying, we are going to talk about what we want to know tonight. So, I'm going to bring up, now that I'm in the meeting here, I'm going to bring up kind of a mock-up website that we've developed here for our public input platform. That's not the one I was looking for, that's Farmington Hills. There we go. All right. Sweet. So this is not fully built out or anything, but what we're looking at here is kind of the early bones of this website and how it's going to work. And I can share a link to this with you so that you can actually take a closer look at it. But what we've got up here right now is just kind of a landing page where we're talking about we're updating our master plan, and actually Clausen master plan as a phrase is something I'd like to talk about tonight, because I would like to try to brand this a little bit more and name it a little more engagingly than just Clausen master plan. Very brief description up there about what the project is. We have a project timeline over here for the moment that mirrors the timeline that's been presented to you at past meetings, and we've established a couple of just mock-up questions here. So quick poll. What do you want to see in your community the most? And it's just, this is a placeholder question that will be replaced by a real question once we've discussed what we want out of our public input. And then an example of more of an open-ended question at the bottom, what's your favorite thing about your community? Sometimes those are good warm-up questions. You ask people to give like 3 words that they feel describe their city the best. And then you move into the more substantive questions after that.
So would this take you to, and tell me if I'm getting ahead of yourself. So would this be like the introductory question that'll take you to a full survey page with like a progress bar and everything?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Is that once we've discussed here what it is we're looking to find out, then we will build out the full survey and we'll send it to you all for your review. And then once you're happy with it, we would post it live and start soliciting responses. But I just wanted to give you a sense of the environment in which people would be taking the online version of the survey. And we can make sure that we have a version of the survey that's available for people who are not comfortable doing it online as well.
Yeah.
That's important. And we have a couple of, outreach opportunities for that. I mean, a lot of seniors are maybe a little less comfortable taking these surveys online. So we've got Manor and a couple of other outreach methods that we can use to try to get a different version of the survey in their hands.
Yeah. So are you looking for feedback on this yet?
It's not quite ready. I think once we build out the questions, we'll add a couple more pages too, and then at that point, we'd be looking for your feedback on
Okay.
that. Unless you have any real
No, I think
kinda Thunderbolt
I think it
thoughts.
makes sense, right, to have a background of what's the process, what is this?
Right.
But, obviously, just best practices for digital would be, bring the call to action up.
Right,
So people don't have
yeah.
to scroll, some of that, the introductory question's good to take you to the full survey, but.
Yeah.
I like having this not just be a floating link around the internet, but actual a public webpage that you can start on
Right.
for somebody who wants to learn more and provide that feedback.
That's the idea, is that we have a headquarters. And throughout the process, we can share things on this webpage. So let's say we get through our infrastructure portion of our process, and then we can post, well, here's the framework we developed for infrastructure, and we can allow people to respond to that and comment on it. And we can do that with every module as we get through each of them. And it allows us to keep people informed. If people really want to follow along with the process, they're able to just go to this site and follow along with the process.
So, Joe, with that, will comments be publicly viewable, or are they things that get submitted and you kind of share with us? How is that?
So we can do it a few different ways. We can have them all be publicly viewable. If you go in there, we can turn on moderation so that if somebody puts something obscene in there, we don't have to necessarily have that show up publicly. And it does happen.
Yeah, I believe so,
I
yeah.
have seen some really wild survey responses over the years, and I've seen personal attacks in survey responses as well, and we don't want that either.
Constructive.
I've
Right.
literally seen, we asked what are the 3 biggest weaknesses in a community, and I literally saw someone name 3 members of the city council, and it was like, okay, that's ad hominem. We don't really need to be going there. But yeah, we can have them all visible. I think we can even turn on upvoting. I don't know if we want to do that or not, but
Can
under
you
the right-
expand on that? What do you mean by uploading?
it means that if people see the comment and they say, I agree with that, they can actually
Oh,
put
like a
little
thumbs up.
on
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
okay.
And in general, I prefer not to have a thumbs down option. But the upvoting can be useful for certain types of open-ended questions. So that's something that we'll want to consider, and it's a decision that we can make after we've formulated our questions too. We don't necessarily have to say, yes, we're definitely doing upvoting, or no, we're definitely not right now.
Okay, can I ask one more question before we?
Sure.
Or I guess give one more input. What I would kind of love, and I don't know if this would fit here, but is maybe some more video interaction of actually explaining to the citizens like what a master plan is and how it functions in the importance and how it forms the city and the, I guess, brevity of like how that impacts the future.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that's possible or like who might make a video, kind of just a quick little snippet of like, hey, here's how your master plan worked in the last 5 years, and this is an outcome of it, or just something to, because I don't think a lot of citizens engage only because they don't know the importance of it.
Sure, yeah, we can do that kind of thing, and we've helped a few other cities do it. In those cases, the cities themselves ultimately made the videos, but we can work out how that works with the city. If our assistance is needed for that, we can do that. And yeah, I do think that, especially for some viewers, it's just a much more comfortable thing to watch a little video rather than read a page about what a master plan is and how it works. But yes, we can do that.
Okay.
I kind of agree with that. You mentioned branding earlier, and I think that goes along the lines of branding, right? We want to tell a story to the public, to the citizens of Clawson,
Right.
why a master plan is important. But even like with respect to the modules you've shared for us to think about, why these specific modules are important for us to talk about too, right?
Sure.
It might be fun to have members of the commission, go over those certain aspects of the video. I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody on, but just, as a way to engage with the community themselves, just like a 2-minute snippet, and build that familiarity, I guess. But yeah, I like that idea.
And just, I mean, keeping count, like, we have a budget and everything like that. I know there are some
Right.
resources online, so I would just suggest, checking there. It looks like quick Google search, like there's some options through Michigan State University and some others that have put out like 30-second video, what's a master plan? But if you want to
Sure.
customize it for
Oh,
Clawson,
that's
I
true.
totally
Yeah.
agree. Like if we want to talk about the modules themselves, which are specific to our city, that's a good option, right?
Mm-hmm.
To have
Right.
one of us or a member of the community talk about it.
Yeah, and generally speaking, you don't want these things to be more than like a minute long.
Right.
Like they've got to be quick in and out so that people get it, and then they can move on with their lives, or get on with taking the survey, which is really what we want. We have to be respectful of people's time. But yes, I think one video per module makes a lot of sense. And then an overall introductory video also makes a lot of sense. And then at the end of the process, a quick video sort of summarizing what's happened and where we are and how people can view and respond to what's been produced. I think that's also valuable. And that could, of course, be mirrored with text.
Joe, I'm staring at the infrastructure module, but I've seen in other instances in terms of collecting public input, where they have a more interactive map, so to speak.
Yep.
And they're pinpointing this intersection's a problem. People from an infrastructure perspective, we're talking about complete streets or non-motorized plans, maybe giving the people an opportunity to pinpoint. I'd really like the sidewalks to be improved here, or more, or have a sidewalk there, or wider whatever the input or feedback might be.
Sure.
But I think from a visual perspective, if people are, pinning different locations of either concerns or opportunities, that visually can give all of us and the residents a very strong indicator of we need to pay attention to this corridor or this intersection, or whether it's a flooding issue, a non-motorized issue, or what have you.
Right.
To help, help give us an indication. I think all of us, we're all residents, and everybody knows where all our own flooding concerns, that we can say, hey, my street floods right here, or.
Right. And that was one of my, yeah, I've got some suggestions in my back pocket if we need to get things going. So that was one of my suggestions is, well, we can ask people where there have been problems in terms of, storms producing flooding. And people can put a dot on the map and say, and then their comment can be street floods, basement floods, both. It would give people an opportunity, and I think we'd get a decent response to that because people would say, "Oh, I get to say where I've seen the flooding," and I do think that people want us to know where the flooding's occurred, and it could be very, very useful, from a planning standpoint, to see that on a map to say, "Wow, there's a real problem in this part of town, and this part of town seems to be kind of doing okay." And, I'm sure we've got past data that we can line that up against and say, all right, this seems to actually match up with what we know we were having problems with in past incidents. So I think that's kind of
It looks like you have that capability, like page 37, so you guys could do that, definitely.
yes, we can do that. Yep, we can absolutely do that. We've done it in the past.
Oh, I see, geolocation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So we can do the geolocation thing. And then the other thing that I thought might be kind of cool to do for the infrastructure portion of it is we have the ability to give people a budget of, a generic like $1 million or whatever, and they can allot it to different priorities. So that could give us a sense of how people feel about the different priorities within that category. What's most important to our citizens? If because it also drives home the fact that we have limited resources, right? And we've got to figure out what to do with those limited resources. So if we have a set of streets, what's the most important thing to fix? If we've got a set of issues with our utilities, what do we need to address first?
Well, and I do love that idea, especially when we're considering the CIP, and that can also drive
Right.
our plans in terms of CIP and how they might allocate certain resources in looking at that. Plus, like you said, I think it's real. Everybody wants every street fixed, but then when they see the dollar sign on their taxes, they're like, wait a minute, I can maybe go over a couple bumps there, right?
When you opened up saying you're going to give people a bucket, I was afraid you're going to say full of blacktop in it. They could be patching their own
Go
driveways.
fix your worst pothole.
But with that said, I also, I like that specific input on allocating. I would also like specific input on what they want to see in terms of businesses growing in Clawson. Because I feel like that same feedback is like, oh, another auto shop, or oh, another bar. Well, it would be great to get actual feedback from citizens on like, what do you think would thrive here? And what do you think Clawson would be great at being unique for, kind of thing.
It's nice that we would get that input, but we have really no control over.
For
what-
sure, but we can, when we're looking at different zones and talking about what we're allowing in certain zoning and maybe changing those zones, I think that would be valuable in looking at potentials.
Yeah, and that would be interesting to do the geolocation map, because I think we always hear we have enough restaurants, but they're kind of always thinking downtown. So when we're looking to expand, because I know you want to, some of your other modules focus on different aspects of the city, right? Different corridors.
Right.
So if we could somehow, even if it's a quick input list, top 3 things by district, right? Because then that would help us do zoning a little better than just hearing, well, I'm sick of bars. You
Right,
know? I want
right.
to see more of this. But yeah, we can at least hone in on zoning a little bit more if we did it that way. But Joe, to take a step back, like my biggest question to you was going to be, before we get totally off the rails, was I've seen a lot of surveys go around in the city. So like, what do we have that we've already collected? I guess 2 points. One, I want to see best practice for asking questions. What's the response rates? Where do we like lose people?
Sure.
So fall off, all that. That's interesting just from a questionnaire design perspective, but also what data do we already have and like when was it collected? Because we will probably need to ask similar questions again if they're 10 years old. But I know we did the sustainability one. They do a downtown I think DDA does, their own survey, things like that. So to
Sure.
help us prioritize like what information we have and what do we need to collect.
Sure.
Because I don't want to feel like we're asking residents to do a similar survey that we just did for sustainability or something like that.
Right,
Right?
yeah.
Just taxing them, to your point, like we got to meet them where they are, but also not overtax them. So
Right.
I think a couple of things, all that historical, but also if anybody else is planning on running a survey, I don't know if we can find that out,
Sure.
just to make sure we either kind of, economy of scale or don't overtax them at the same exact time or something like that.
Right. Yeah, because we know we have, the school district has their survey results from when they were doing their initial planning. So we've got that.
Yeah.
We've got some stuff from intermediate efforts on that as well. And then we have,
So I know
The
sustainability
the
was helpful
sustainability
because it had
stuff,
some
yeah.
information around downtown and biking, and that could fall into different aspects of this module.
right.
But yeah, I would just love to somehow collect that, and not to put like more on your plate, but
Sure.
be able to review kind of what data is already available, but also would love to see what questions asked and how they did it,
Sure, yeah.
if we can do both.
Can I add on to that? Because I took the sustainability, and that was a long time ago, but there were some questions that I was like, well, none. Like, maybe there's a different priority that I might have that like wasn't listed there, and I don't have a specific to speak to, but I do recall when I was taking it thinking, well, what about this? Or, so there's and I had to choose one of the 4 or whatever.
Right.
I don't know if there's a way to capture none of these,
Usually
and
it's, like,
then,
other specified.
Yeah, you have
so
to have
open
an,
box.
you have to have an open-ended option, yeah.
was there an open-ended option on that one, or no?
I didn't design it, I came in after.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
well, because I remember
usually-
feeling like, well, they didn't, and this is not a criticism, but I was just like,
That's the
well.
learnings, right? Yeah, we
For
need to-
sure, yeah, that's something I experienced, that maybe if there are so many none of the aboves, that we can circle back to what is, for you, and try to gauge a response in
Yeah,
that
we
way.
can always leave an open-ended option if we've got a multiple choice
Okay,
question. Okay. Alright, so I like what I'm hearing so far, and
So Joe, do you or, I don't know, Nick, do we have a public engagement plan? I don't want to call it a public engagement plan, but a public engagement type plan? A strategy of how we're, because I appreciate all the modules, the content, the potential types of questions we can ask, but do we have a particular strategy on how we're going to engage the people?
so, well, the city has an adopted public participation plan, which of course we will consult that, but yeah, we need to be pulling together like how we're gonna reach out and to whom, to spread ourselves as widely as possible. I don't know if Nick wants to speak to that.
I can touch on that a little bit. So I know, obviously, social media is going to be the biggest kicker right now, but outside of that, I know that there's some mail to home campaigns that we've talked about doing, and I think a big one that'll be good for the next year is to have some type of attendance by, maybe it's planning commission with staff at a table at, say, 4th of July events, the chamber events, DDA events. That way, we're truly meeting people where they are, and if people are going to these events in Clawson, they care about the community, so maybe they're more apt to participate. And so I know we did it with the sustainability committee. We had like a QR code, and so if we just had a QR code at the table and then some other information, flyers, maybe concepts down the road, we have that there, and so they can use the QR code and go to the website and be able to access all that information there. And so a true plan, not on paper, but I think we've got a number of ideas, and I think the one where we're out in the community, I think we'll need to get some participation from you guys, and you guys all seem very excited to get out there and get people to participate. So
Are we going to have something for the 4th of July?
that was just an example.
Oh, okay.
I think we can. I don't know if we're necessarily ready to roll everything out just yet. I think it might depend if they're done.
And just to expand on that, because I think we talked about it a little bit last time, I think it's a great idea, because you can mail something to somebody's house, like a postcard, but sometimes they don't know what it is, they just toss it aside. So if you can catch somebody on the street, sure. No one's gonna probably do anything at that moment, but they can learn about the process and take home a QR code, like a little postcard. The other thing I was thinking is too, like, because they're split into modules, right? So if you were talking about whatever, Baker and Shalm, like we should do something in kind of conjunction with like a PTA meeting or something with that targeted engaged audience. So just think about how we can kind of work together with other community groups and, you know, city groups. And so same thing, like obviously I'm next to Hunter and the seniors kind of hang out there. So we were talking about they might not go online, but maybe we can have paper surveys like in that area where they have lunch and things like that. You know, so just I'm sure there's different other examples, but
It may be a Dropbox. I'm sure that would
Yeah.
be something that at their leisure, if they're coming or going, they could take home and then they'll drop it back off. Maybe
Yeah.
we can have a Dropbox there.
And I guess part of my question, and I'm kind of going a little bit all over the place, but you know how we're going to structure the survey. You can take different module surveys as well, I assume, or is it
Yes.
one survey? Because then you could really hone into for this module survey. Yeah, we're talking to people that are utilizing the school district. You know, if it's parents or teacher groups or whatever it is. But then being able to go on and continue other modules, I think would be really important because I think you really, like to your point, got to keep it brief. Nobody's spending more than 5 minutes typically, unless they're, very engaged. So
Right.
being able to like almost autofill like the lowest bucket, like we want them to, that engaged group that is kind of associated with this module to fill out this one, but then have the option to go on.
Sure.
And then I would just ask that to make best use of the results and data, we kind of have like a mandatory question list of like, I don't want to know, demographics or something similar that I think we always capture in these surveys.
Yes.
Just because anytime we're going to want to kind of cut the data that way to make
Well,
use of
can
it.
I ask a question based on that? Because there does seem like if, I totally get why you would want to specify and hone in on like capture our right audience, but also with that comes a bias, right?
Yeah.
So like if we're only getting school people for that one, it just as an example, they're all going to be generally feeling a certain way about the Shalom property. Are we doing a whole overarching one and then one's specific to each module? Or are you talking about going forth with a campaign for each specific different one from the?
Well, I think that's part of what's
Right.
open to discuss right now because I
Right.
agree. I think it should be one survey.
Right.
But with the ability to kind of quick link to certain sections, right? Because you might not get somebody to sit down and take what might be 20 minutes for the whole survey.
Oh, so you could say like, what's most important to you, and it would take you to that module
That's how
kind
we
of
do
thing?
it a lot in our market research.
Okay.
Like,
Right.
we ask them to fill out like core demographic information and then like start with a module. Like sometimes it rotates. And then you have the option to continue on and go to other modules, but at least, you have them filling out a portion, and partial complete's usually better than nothing.
Yeah,
So-
generally speaking, yeah. Because you want as much as you can get, and the thing is, if you come at people with a lot of repeat surveys, if you try to survey them in June and then you try to survey them again in August and then you try to survey them again in October, by the time you get to the end of October, you get like 5 responses because people are like, "Oh, I'm sick of this." So, and I mean, I certainly know that's my reaction when I get the repeat thing. Yeah, I think it has to be one thing, but I like the idea of allowing people to kind of drill in to what's most important to them.
So would you kind of propose the first question as like, what 3 things are most important to you? And each of those 3 things are essentially one of the modules, right? And based on that, it would drive them to survey
I'll
2 or
see-
3 of those modules. Is that how you would
See
set
how
that
much
up?
of that functionality we've got available to us, and that might drive some of how we structure it.
Okay.
But yeah,
Because we would almost get a baseline from that of like, well, 10 people filled out module 6, but 30 people filled out module 1, so we would get a second data from, the response of just what modules are being filled out, right? Or is that like a bias? I don't know. I'm not a market professional, I guess.
yeah. I mean, we might be able to learn something about proportionally how many people touch each module, but I think I could probably predict which modules are going to be touched the most. I think the infrastructure module will probably be the most used.
In the schools,
yeah.
depending on how we word them, right?
Yeah, and the schools, I think, to Josh's point, the school did some pretty extensive work. We may not need to repeat much there.
But how much
they've
of
got a
that,
lot.
are we going to have access to that at any point in time, the specific data?
I think we do have access to
Oh.
it, Nick, don't we?
If we don't, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're in dialogue with the school district and.
Well,
and-
by we, I mean the planning commission. Is that something that can be
Oh, yeah.
sent to all the
well,
commissioners?
Yeah, if
to
if
look
we've
at?
got it, we would share it with you.
Okay, yeah.
You said extensive research. I mean, to the previous point of like wanting to make sure we're not creating a bias, do you know how comprehensive and inclusive it was?
Yeah, I'd have to go back to their, I saw I saw their presentations, but we can get that information
Okay.
for you, yeah.
The other thing that just came to mind too was, a lot of the, I don't know what to call it, the market research strategies, in creating the surveys, seem to be very digitally focused, or
Right.
having requires you to have access to the internet, to computer, et cetera. One of the feedbacks that I mean, I was not on the planning commission at the time, but even maybe during the amendment of the master plan, I guess I caught the tail end of that. But also the last master plan, some of the feedback that I heard was how it was not as inclusive in terms of notification, engagement to all generations. And so I just wanted, I appreciate and I like the technologicalness of the surveys, but how do we do that? How do we implement that? So for those who don't have access.
Right, yeah, and that's one of the things that we've been talking about. I mentioned it earlier that we have probably a lot of seniors who don't necessarily have the ability to access it, so kind of meeting them where they are, Clausen Manor or the community center or other places that have senior programs, I think is important. So you can actually reach out with physical response opportunities there. And then I think the most disincluded group when it comes to these efforts is generally youth. They're just not ever engaged or reached out to. And we've tried in a lot of communities to change that, and we've had some real success in some of them, and not so much in others. We in Commerce Township, a couple of members of our staff actually went to some high school classrooms and talked about what master planning is, and gave a little presentation. So reaching out to that group, I think, is more challenging in a lot of ways, and we can try to help have this, the school district maybe be a conduit to some of them,
Can teachers do that? Can they get extra credit for filling out a survey and explain
they can, yeah.
I was just
yeah.
curious.
Well, can you put a limit, not put a limit, but can you define youth? Are we talking even fourth graders through high school? Or you're talking all kids that can read, essentially, or?
Yeah, I mean, generally, you're looking more at that high school age range, but I don't see why middle school would be out of the question either. I mean,
Because they're the
it's-
technologically savvy people,
Right.
so I think that the problem with that would just be the idea in themselves that the engagement idea of being a part of government, but I think that they'd be ready and willing to engage truly. They just probably just my assumption, don't know that they can.
Right,
Right.
and,
They
and,
might,
you know.
they might be more apt to improve the playground systems than the actual roads.
Maybe not middle school. I was gonna say, if you're going for elementary, you're gonna get
Yeah.
yo-yos or something from my
Right.
son, I guarantee it. But like, you know,
And I like the idea of piggybacking on like the school and other formats, because like our agenda tonight, it's on our agenda that we're gonna be talking about the master plan, and you see there is no public here. It's hard to draw the people in here, so it might be easier for us to get smaller groups and go to them. Like
Right.
at the farmer's market, on Sunday, there's people wandering through.
that's a good
You
idea.
could-
Right, exactly, yeah, and that's the kind of place we want to have outreach.
Just had an idea with respect to the youth, and I don't know what this looks like, but what if we created some sort of like YouTube video competition of like, the youth, I don't know, creating a video of, what's most important to them and what they really love about the city.
Like a TikTok.
That'd be fun.
Right, I mean,
I think council could like appreciate them at a meeting or something, right? Couldn't they? That'd be fun.
Joe. So if we look at the end, think with the end in mind, what is the perfect outcome? What is success in its definition? And I'll give you an example to kind of make that a little bit clearer. If we do a really good job engaging the public and soliciting their feedback and are able to integrate that into a document for our master plan, it will do this, that, and the other, or if we do a terrible job, it's irrelevant, it wasted a lot of our time, it really didn't accomplish anything for the city or its residents. So I'm trying to get consensus among the commissioners here a little bit about, in the end, what is it must do this. All the effort we spend on the website, all the effort we spend at the 4th of July party, all the effort we spend in other surveys going to Clausen Manor, I don't know. But in the end, it's got to accomplish this with fidelity. Otherwise, it was kind of just busy work.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it has to provide us with a picture of what people want and value, I think. And there's no perfect outcome. These are never going to be scientific. You don't have a scientific result with this kind of public input. Yes, you could potentially pay like a survey company to do random sampling and things like that, but even that, at the scale of a city the size of Clausen, there's going to be huge margins of error. So really, the first thing I said there is what we're looking for. We're looking for information that gives us a sense of what people want and what they value. And you hope that you're hearing from a lot of people, and we will do everything we can to reach a lot of people and drive them to take these surveys. And if we find that we're not getting a lot of response, we have to make adjustments to get more responses. But ultimately, whatever we wind up getting is what we have to work with, essentially. And like I said, we'll work to make sure that that's as much as possible and that it reaches as wide a swath of our population as possible.
The intensity of effort to gather those opinions and to, be as diverse as we can, this is crystal clear to me. And I have no doubt that everyone here and everyone in your organization will see to that. My concern is for it to be purposeful and for us to move the needle in the end. Just gathering all of this feedback might not result in anything if we're not strategic about it. I'll give you an example. If we ask a survey, if we put out all the mother of all surveys, let's say, and we get the mother of all engagement back, and everybody says, I want a new road, I want a new sewer, and I want a new water main, and I want lower taxes, okay? The end. That's all they say. And, sort of stitched into that wish list is a fundamental religion that there is unlimited money and it grows on trees in Berkeley. And we just have to pipeline to Berkeley to get all those funds and deposit them here. And then the system works, right? We can have the new roads, or the new sewers and the water mains and everything else. So I look at this as an opportunity maybe to and I think one of your ideas was to include a theoretical budget. And I want to put my full weight behind that because I think there's a real opportunity here to do two things. It's to engage the public, explain our city's unique problems. Like in this document with the survey, the header of that document should really say, look, here's our PACER studies, here's our current condition. Just so you know, it's $75 or $100 million to fix that. Where would you start, you know? And get them to understand clearly the unique challenges of infrastructure that we currently have, and give them that as a teaser, so to speak, so that when we do get feedback, it's balanced with the understanding that money doesn't grow on trees, and we have to be a little bit choosy, right? Because I think the worst thing that could happen is we get we want it all, the end, right? And that's no value to us, right? We need to know what would be second, third, fourth priority to
Right,
the majority of the
Well, I
residents.
think that would show too proportionately by the responses, right? If there's proportionately 3 times more that respond on infrastructure than there is on something else, then we would know that infrastructure is 3 times more important in general than another module. But I do agree with the dollar value. I think it's important for residents to see that. But, we based the sustainability, I forget how many respondents it was, but I think it was like 200 and
It
something.
was a few hundred, yeah.
So we still felt comfortable moving forward with that, with a 200 response rate or whatever you want to call it. So I think our efforts won't go unrecognized or like unacted upon. I guess I don't know
No,
the
not at
right
all.
word for that.
Not even
So I'm
right.
not too worried about the outcome and what we need. Like,
Sorry.
is there a certain number you're looking for to give validity to it, or?
I'm sorry, I miscommunicated. I have no argument about how many is enough or how many is not.
Oh, I just didn't know.
My
if
whole
that's-
thing is when this goes out to be purposeful, I think it's almost a bilateral communication. So we are educating the people who take the
No, I
time to
agree with
participate
that,
with it.
yes. Yeah.
And then, okay, with that information, could you process that and tell me like this, and this? And if nothing else, I think we would do something that we can't do nearly enough of these days, and that's inform voters of the truth of the reality of our situation. So even if we didn't get $1 or we didn't get a bit of clarity on whether roads or sewers are more important to the majority of the residents, if we did nothing else than explain very clearly, these are our roads, these are our sewers, I think that would be purposeful. And I have not seen it talked about, but another thing that I look at in my mind for a master plan, and maybe it's a sustainability issue as well, is the financial solvency of the city, right? If we're spending money out of control more than our revenues are projected to be, like, this is not sustainable. It won't be a safe community in the future. It won't be, we don't need to worry about bike paths in that situation someday because it just won't matter. So I'm interested if the average resident has an idea in their mind of how much debt and how much, service on debt they're willing to pay as part of their taxes. So we've not talked about it before. It's just an open question. Think about it. And then future meetings, just be interested, like, is there a limit how much you would be willing your city to go into debt to pursue these goals?
Can you put numbers on that? I mean, that's a complicated, in a little bit.
I've never
I
been
think
asked
it's
this
more
question.
counsel.
I've never
Yeah.
even had this concept brought to my attention. Again, money grows on trees, comes from Berkeley, the end. That's all I know. I'm just kidding, Joe. I'm poking on Berkeley.
I have to ask, what, in the context of the scope of the planning commission, what,
Yeah, this is always where it comes back to. So in the context of the planning commission, we're responsible for the master plan, right? So We're doing things to raise awareness that these are the issues of the city, and this is where we want the city to go in the future. The decisions we make today grow the city or shrink the city. The quality of those goals has a direct impact on how that future is going to be. If we don't worry about the infrastructure, for example, someday we're going to wake up, we're not going to have good roads, we're not going to have good sewers. It's going to be a problem. Someone will blame at that moment planning commissioners of the past for not thinking about that and engineering goals around those items, right? So similar thing, when we say we have these goals for the roads and the sewers and so forth, it is easy to say we want new roads and we want new sewers, but we waste our time dreaming about goals, believing that we don't have to worry about what it costs. And then Mr. Casera here will come in and say, nice goals, there's no money, stop talking about it. And I'm trying to future-proof that futility of this effort by, driving to the resident the need to be specific about how we view the future of the city. If the future of the city is to have 5 times the taxes we have today, I don't think we have a problem getting our new roads. But if the voters aren't going to vote for it, and if we can't calibrate the voters to that through this activity, I don't know if it's maximizing its potential.
And
So,
to address it, I mean, what I'm hearing is kind of where I was going originally with what data and information do we have, so we don't have to replicate and take this down a longer path than it needs to go, right? But also, it sounds like the prioritization type questions, as well as like the money basket approach of where would you spend, those will really help hone in this exercise of like we can't say we want everything because we know we can't accomplish everything. And if you have a master plan with, 450 goals, then nothing gets done or nothing's prioritized. So this would hopefully help just set that prioritization for us to say, we can't have 40 goals with 10 sub-bullets for each, but let's, hone that into 10 with 3 sub-bullets. something like
Well,
that.
can I just add, can't we give it a scale? There's a scale to this, right? Like, we all know that all the roads aren't gonna be fixed next year unless everybody incurs a crazy amount of taxes. But like, we can know that, like chopping down an oak tree, that we're taking little jabs at it, right? So if we wanna put 5 jabs into the oak tree and 1 jab into the oak tree of another thing of, sustainability or bike paths or whatever it is, but it's still valuable. It's not to say that like we're gonna forget everything else and just fix a road. It's a scale, right? It's like a proportion to how we're gonna allocate money. But I think that if we go into like voters, we're not, to me, again, it's like a city council thing where it's like, well, we're not, they all, residents vote, but like, we're just trying to gauge a response of residents and see prioritization, and the way the master plan might work in prioritization is not dollar for dollar. It's like, how are we gonna grow this by changing a different zone, right? How are we gonna change zoning or landscape plans, right? I don't know, maybe I'm way off, but like, how are we gonna address that with our zoning and our landscape and our, parking plans, whatever. It's not gonna be a dollar for dollar thing, because that's not, am I wrong, Joe? But it's not how we operate necessarily, right?
Yeah, I think you've got 2 ultimate implementation tools that you're trying to feed with this plan. One is your capital improvement plan, and the other is your zoning ordinance. And your zoning ordinance is always going to be the primary implementation tool for a master plan, because your master plan is centered on future land use planning. But your capital improvement plan also has a locus point in the planning commission, and at the prioritization that we're looking for from our respondents there is going to help administration ultimately figure out what some of its priorities are for capital improvement planning. And I think there's a lot of good points being made, and I think that we do have to ask questions that people can answer quickly, and that they can, that are based on their own observations and knowledge. And people don't generally have deep knowledge of, I mean, heck, even people in government have to kind of struggle through the idea of how budgeting is done and where revenue comes from, because it's complicated. So, you know, I don't know that people are going to necessarily be able to tell us, you know, what their threshold for taxability is necessarily, but we don't necessarily need to know that. We need to know what their priorities are, and from their priorities, we can then take the pool of money that we're looking at in our capital improvement process,
Right.
and we can extrapolate what we need to prioritize.
So let me be even crystal clearer then, because I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying on accident.
I think Joe just said what I was trying to say a lot better than what I said. That's all I was trying to say, is that we can't put dollar for dollar, right? But
Yeah, and
but
I'm
go
not-
ahead, you can.
I'm not proposing dollar for dollar, so for some reason, people, yeah, I don't communicate efficiently enough. So how would you guys feel of this? A question in the survey, how much more would you be willing to pay on your taxes as a percentage to facilitate your goals on the master plan?
I wrote that as one of my
Yeah.
potential questions.
So it's not
It's a-
dollar
it's a
for dollar,
debate.
it's not committing, it's just a thought-provoking question that we can use in the future to say, are we way the hell off in our
Right, no,
ambitions?
I can,
Or are we a little off?
that's much less complicated than I was
Yeah.
imagining. So are you saying a dollar amount or a
No.
percentage amount
And-
in that
and
question?
I'm not even committing to a specific language set. This is just
Oh.
for conceptually,
Yeah.
okay? We're talking about, Joe's asking us here, you know, what question can we ask and so forth, and he's put some very good ones down, a number of good formats down. I'm asking, you know, in principle, can we use this opportunity to get a flavor for what the average resident, you know, is willing to commit to? Because I think a lot of residents may be of the opinion, it should just get better and it shouldn't cost me anything.
Right.
I was gonna say, the point is we just wanna gauge, right? I may say, I can give you all the priorities in the world,
Yes.
but I may also say, I don't wanna give you any more money at all.
Right.
So here's all your priorities, no more money.
I think there's great value in that, and in addition to it, if we use this opportunity to inform voters of our issues, you know, they may not know. We assume they know, but they may not know the condition of our water mains and so forth. I think everybody's comfortable complaining. I've decided, after all of my experiences in this role, everybody is comfortable having an opinion, and most people are abundantly comfortable complaining. But complaining on balanced data and you know, patient understanding of how we got here, I doubt it. So if we can use this opportunity to inform them of the realities of it, and then again ask them, you know, do you feel any ownership in this part of the problem? Are you, you know,
So just-
willing to put some skin in the game to help?
Not even ownership though, because really it sucks,
Just to clarify,
right?
just so I can understand, you're just want to ask the general question, would you be willing to pay more or pay for this? Like, I say period, but you're not asking for a percentage, a mill, or a dollar amount, you're just
In my
asking
mind, I'd like to know a
generally.
percentage, because I'd like to be able to quantify how close to or how far away our CIP is, how close to and far away, you know, the activity city council is doing. And I'm not suggesting for everybody in the room and watching that we have that authority, that we control the budget, that we do this and play. No, and no, don't infer that, don't suggest that. That is council's and this city manager responsibility. But, you know, this is a big activity that we are carrying out here, and I think if we can gather good data on it that is informative to voters and gives everybody a chance to maybe be more in harmony, it would be a great thing.
Yeah. I think it's in that section of, like, we're talking about doing the money basket exercise. There can be a brief, concise language around
Yeah.
what you're referring to.
Sure.
Which should help derive people to, I don't know, more accurately prioritize and understand that you can't do
Yeah.
everything,
It
right?
sets
And
the
that's a
scene
good
for
area
people.
to kind of do it if we can find a good way to go about that.
Yeah.
Because for me, I might think sustainability, I would, you know, potentially put in energy, effort, and resources, money included, But for other people, that's not a priority to them, right?
So would you
that's how-
scale
so that's
that
gonna
by
You
like
would
$10 a
think-
month, or like, how would you do that percentage? Like, are you willing to pay $10 to $20 a month, $30 to $40 a
I
month?
don't
Or like,
think we
how
can
would you
get that
gauge that?
specific.
I agree.
I think it's more of a multiple choice type question about, how do you've prioritized a bunch of things. How do you feel about paying for these priorities, and your choices are something like, I'd be willing to pay more for more rapid progress, or I'd be willing to tolerate slower progress in exchange for taxes remaining the same. I feel like I already pay too much and would not be willing to pay more.
Okay.
Those would be the kinds of responses that they could choose. And a lot of people might choose that third one, and that tells you, well, okay, I guess our progress is going to be slow if we go in that direction. But it maybe kind of communicates that, well, if you do pay more, we would get more progress. And if we keep things the same, the progress is going to be slower. And if we go down in terms of our revenue, then obviously progress is going to slow to a crawl.
So you would
But,
advise not to do a percentage?
I don't think that we can get that specific, because
Okay.
I don't think that people, I just think about myself, and, I know more about the workings of municipal government than most people because of my job. And if I had to think about that in the heat of taking a survey, I'd be like,
That's why I was saying like a dollar amount a month. Like, I
Yeah.
think people's threshold, when you put it for a dollar amount a month, there'd be a lot more transparency. Because it's easy to say like 3% a year, but what does that mean to somebody based on
Right.
their taxable value of their home, right? So you're saying just, it's probably best to leave numbers out.
I think it's a general question of like, yeah, I'd be willing to
Okay.
pay more for faster progress, or I'm okay with slower progress paying what I'm paying now, or I'd like to pay less and accept the consequences of that.
I would say, this is just a thought start. This is, sort of our first conversation on this. Let's take some time to think about it. But I will tell you right now, I think there's value in being specific enough with a percentage or some link to reality. I know I paid about 50% more in taxes today than I did 5 or 6 years ago. I know that. I can watch it. Everybody on Zillow can look at the same thing. So my question is, what will my taxes be in 10 years? And can I afford to live in here, and so, and that's, my mentality is nothing is going to change between now and then. So if you come at me with a master plan that says, we'd like new roads, we need like new sewers and so forth, my belief is it's not for free, and it's going to be higher, and it's going to be, at this rate of where my taxes are increasing already, I'm going to say, I would be willing to pay 2% or 5%,
That's hard for an everyday person to scale.
Well, but I think we can educate them and say, based on your property value, you're paying approximately this percentage today.
We're like 46 mills in Clausen, right?
I understand that.
So but
yeah,
it's hard to.
Not everybody even pays attention to that.
Agreed.
We can educate them with a sentence that says that and say, would you be willing to?
so again, first.
But we can talk about it.
First
Yeah,
draft. I'm
okay,
just- this
no,
is-
I'm curious.
To my knowledge,
That's
this
the only
wasn't even
reason. Okay.
in the scope of what we were doing, so I'm just introducing it as a
Yeah.
topic, because I think it would pay dividends regardless of,
I think it's a fair scale to get a census on, right? So I'm not trying to shoot you down at all, but I think a lot of the questions are in the language that you pose them. So I think that an everyday American, sorry to
Yeah.
sound like that, but it would be better to say like $10 to $20 a month.
it's tempting to dumb it down so that it's
I'm not
easy,
trying to say dumb
but-
it down because that sounds awful. But like
It's honest,
a
I think.
3% increase in my taxes is, I'm going to have to break out a calculator. I'm sorry. Like I'll
The
just
sooner
have
you
to
do,
do
the better
that.
you're going to be financially. But, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about
Yeah,
the resident.
for
The
sure.
sooner they do, the better everybody's going to be.
But we're talking quick surveys too. So
I
just,
agree. I get
yeah.
it, so, anyway.
And I think
Thank you.
what we're after is we're looking for the public input on the master plan.
Yep.
And we have 6 modules listed here. And I think your audience is going to look at this and say I'm a general Clausenite, which I am. I would be interested in infrastructure, obviously. I wouldn't be that much interested in the school district unless I lived over by the school district. That's kind of zoning area, or a certain.
Or if you have kids there.
More of a, yeah, but that's a limited area, right? What's going to happen to the old buildings? I would be interested in the parking in citywide. Everybody in town's complaining about parking at times. Sustainability and resiliency plan, that'd be of interest to me. But when you start getting into the expanding the mixed-use development and the reevaluation of the BRD districts, I think you're starting to lose the public input at that point.
Sure, yeah, and I think, the BRD district doesn't mean jack to anybody.
Right.
It's
Right.
South Main, or the Crooks Corridor. We have to refer to it in terms that people are going to be familiar with, because people aren't sitting at home reading the zoning ordinance. So for our purposes, yeah, okay, that's the module. But for the purposes of outreach, the terminology has to be colloquialized. It has to be made much more digestible, and we have to make it clear that we're talking about physical changes to the uses and fabric of those areas of the city. And
The average resident, to me, I think, is more interested in their roads in front of their house, and they're interested in where they park their car around town. I've heard a lot of comments about that.
I mean, if you look on Facebook, though, everybody's talking about restaurants and
Yeah.
which ones are coming and going. So if we can to Joe's point, like kind of reevaluate how we word that section, those now E and F, module 5 and 6, become pretty hot topic items. And considering how often we get feedback around, I can't believe Puma Chug's closed, and I can't believe there's another bar coming in down the street, and this and that, or another nail salon. Like, those are things where I think we could get feedback around zoning, but we got to do it intelligently. It's just really tough to.
We just don't talk zoning language,
Exactly,
essentially.
you
We
don't-
talk
yeah.
about, what do you want in the city?
Right.
Right.
What do
and
you
that's-
think will
And that's one
thrive?
for younger folks that might not think about roads as much as
Mm-hmm.
where they're going to go eat or shop or do those things. So I think this is, again, where very interested to see how different, folks answer different portions of surveys. And,
We can always zone an area, but we can't demand what's going to go in there.
right.
We can say that you can put a restaurant there, or you can't
And
put a
that's
restaurant
to
there,
Nate's
but we
point, right? We
can't.
got to be very intelligent about what type of questions we ask, right?
Right.
Because it's fun to just dream up, yeah, let's gather a bunch of feedback, but if we can't enact any change on it, then what's the point of capturing that information?
Right,
So-
yeah, and I think that's the point
Right.
Nathan was making earlier.
Well, and we can induce or reduce certain things, like with our parking. I know this isn't, it doesn't speak exactly to the master plan, but if we're looking to expand parking as master plan or something, there's certain aspects of zoning and those ordinances that will welcome developers or discourage developers, and those are things we can look at in certain districts, right, Joe? In
Sure.
terms of like, well, we can't say we want more restaurants, but we can look at what is a restaurant composed of, and what kind of conditions help them thrive, and work towards that in specific zones, right?
Yeah, and I think to that point, Lena, like some of the feedback we've heard from past site plan reviews, right? Joe, can we ask like living situation? I don't know if we can ask like address and stuff like that. That's a little detailed, but like living, if you're in a single family home or
Oh,
a
yeah, I think
multifamily, because that
the
could
composition
change
of your household,
price,
Yeah.
or it could change
Own
parking
rents.
in the different zones and things where we can get actual insight out of it.
Right.
yeah, the composition of your household, and how many people are in your household. If you've got
Yeah.
3 or 4 people, or it's just you, and then the type of unit that you're living in. Those are certainly things that we could ask.
What do you mean by type of unit that you're living in? You're saying apartment or
yeah,
single-family
yeah,
home?
like, exactly,
Or
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so you're not saying renter versus,
No.
Okay.
No, it's more what is the actual physical environment you live in. My house is attached to a bunch of other houses, or my house is not attached to a bunch of other houses.
And in that section, right, we have to be cautious that I think, doesn't DDA have, or there's a parking study and other things.
The DDA does have a
So
parking study, which I
We would be more
gotta-
beneficial to focus
Yeah.
on residential or different, zoned areas. and understand street parking and other things. And
Right.
How do we alleviate that? We have to think through that.
For parking outside of the downtown, I think there's really two things we need to know. What are the underserved areas and how do we make more? And then our challenge, once we have information on what the underserved areas are, is how do we make more available in the underserved areas? I mean, I think West 14 Mile, west of downtown and east of the Westgate District on the north side is one of the most underserved areas of parking in the entire city. There's no street parking. There's a whole bunch of businesses kind of crammed in there. And there's like just sort of weird uses in the back that use up a lot of the land. And there's like vacant lots that look like you could maybe park on them, but you can't because they're actually private. And there's a lot of businesses there that we hear from and are just like, where are my customers supposed to park? And so, I mean, that area comes immediately to mind, but there might be some others that, I'm not thinking of.
But Joe, how do you fix that when there's free public parking just right behind Cantina or, so there's parking available, it's just not as walkable to that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Right, it's not as convenient.
in a downtown, I think we kind of have to do some training, to get people to be willing to walk a little bit more maybe, but.
Or more public parking signs, like a lot of other cities have, like free public parking
Some
right here.
wayfinding would help, definitely.
I think we're not trying to fix it here, we're just trying to decide, do we want to ask people about this to engineer their.
Right.
Well, you said underserved. I mean, define underserved, I guess, because are they really underserved when there's 35 available spaces, not even a quarter mile down the road? Is it underserved or
Well,
not?
yeah, I mean, the downtown's a little different because you've got that public parking, and we have a study for downtown, so I think we've got some baseline information there. But outside of downtown, we don't have that baseline information. I think
Okay.
we kind of need to find out where people are having trouble. And that information might most reliably come from the actual business owners themselves. Like, that might be a focus group or something, where we get people in from various parts of the city and we say, what are you hearing from your customers? Did they have to circulate a lot to find a place to put their car? Did they, are they parked way up the street? Are they parked where they're not supposed to be? And then they ran in quick and got what they needed and left? Because those are the kinds of stories that we hear on the regular, from particularly from business owners in certain parts of town. So I think that can kind of help highlight our areas of need, and then that gives us a sense of the kind of strategies we need to be putting together to serve those areas of need. The solutions to that might be many. It could be entering a public-private partnership with a landowner who maybe is going to get a little bit of income out of us using their vacant lot as a parking lot. It could come in the form of the city just outright buying a lot and turning it into parking that's shared for an entire area.
Well, that would be important to address in the master plan in a
Right.
5-year thing, right?
Yeah, and it's a framework that you're building. Here are areas of known need. Here is a framework of potential solutions to that need.
Well, especially if we're potentially changing zoning
Right.
in BRD districts, right?
Right. Yeah, if we're changing what the districts are about, certainly. And yeah, if you build that framework correctly, when you're doing your capital improvement planning, you can point to the fact that it says that one of the potential methods of getting parking in this area of need is to acquire land for the purpose. Then you could budget for acquiring that land, or you could put it in your capital improvement plan and work toward that. Or but you might have other options in your framework, such as a public-private partnership that incentivizes someone to allow us to use their land as shared parking.
Are you saying we should buy Burger King? No, joking.
Might be something coming on
There
that soon,
could be a
actually.
parking thing there, yeah, but, okay. I don't want to spoil that.
Couldn't put the lot right on 14, I don't think that would be allowed. I went to a planning meeting, I know it was a few years back out in Pontiac, and they were talking about parking structures at that meeting. And their basic attitude was that cars are slowly going to be going away in the future. So it's very expensive to build a parking structure, number one. People didn't want to do it.
Man.
And they said when they are building them now, the floors are not on an angle like you see most of them. They're putting the floors in flat.
And then
So you
ramps,
drive
yeah.
up to the next one, next one, next one. And the purpose of that is when the garage goes away, you've got a level floor, you can make a building out of it.
Right.
So they're going to repurpose it in that route. But their basic attitude was that we're going to see less and less cars in the future.
In some places, that's probably true.
Yeah.
And
have a
in
walkable
others,
street,
it might not be, but.
Yeah.
We have 9 months of winter here,
Yeah.
too, right? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I don't ride my bike in the snow yet.
Well, people in Finland do, though.
But this is interesting, like how you can cross modules between sustainability and parking and
Yes,
You know,
yeah, and given the background that we've got on sustainability, that might be how we touch on it primarily in this survey, and then you can kind of build it in as you're asking about other things, and we may have a couple of explicit questions about it, but yeah, I mean, I think this is some pretty good discussion that we've had here. I think that
And were you interested in like specific questions? Like I can email
if you've got
you,
some
or-
specific questions, I mean, I'm all about it.
I have like 20 questions I started. I'm just asking like, what's the best way for you to digest that?
You
or-
could email. I think we'd send it all through Nick. But yeah, if you've got some specific questions that you've worked up, send it to Nick, and we will.
But all of us, just put it that,
Well, so I'm like, do we want to create like a Google Doc so Nate doesn't send all the same questions I do? No, not.
not from an not from an Open
But
Meetings
the
Act
Charter
perspective.
Commission could.
I just wanted to
Yes,
make sure
they
we were
could.
creating more work for you. That's all. Like, however, that's I guess more my question too is
Yeah.
legally.
The Charter
do I need to
The Charter
show these
Commission was
questions?
attended by two very well-paid lawyers. They had one.
I don't. You guys are my thing, and that's gonna be a no.
We're going to have our lawyer tonight.
Yeah, we gotta
Do some type of Dropbox maybe, or just email
It,
it to me.
it could be a quorum,
So you'll do
essentially, on there,
that.
right? If
Right,
we're
it's an OMA
talking.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Well, I mean, you could see how it could be a quorum by
Because
some people, a Google Doc.
I do,
Yeah.
which is why I was wondering how the Charter Commission got away with it.
We'll go to the Charter Commission and ask them.
I'm not stepping on that minefield.
Joe,
We'll ask Rennis next time we see him.
I doubt we will, but I will.
But yes, do feel free to email those to Nick.
Okay,
And then
that's
we
fine. I
can-
just want to make sure. Again, I was following whatever
Yes.
legal rules are out there. Like, not that I'm putting
Yeah.
anything dicey in an email about what questions do I ask, but I want to make
Right.
sure that one, like, we're not all replicating the work. But if Nick is okay, like deduping questions and
Yeah.
going through again, I know you were trying to say what's available to ask and like okay versus
Right.
like we don't really want to ask these types of questions. It also would help to figure out, like I mentioned, what other surveys and results we have, just so
Sure.
I'm not asking for additional work that's already been done.
Yep.
well, with that said, a couple points. Is there a way that we can kind of publish on that website in some link, kind of a rundown of the other surveys that we already have responses to? Like, here's what the parking study said, so that residents, if they so choose, can educate themselves on certain surveys or studies that
what's
we've already.
existing already.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And my second would be, would it be helpful if, not necessarily this meeting, but future meetings, we discuss about like, maybe have planning commissioners sign up for certain events, or like, I would be okay with even if there's a way to tell certain seniors or certain age groups, I'd be okay with approaching, if we could, like a little tablet at a door and asking, hey, I'm on the planning commission, would you mind giving us your input? If for certain seniors, I'd be okay with volunteering doing that, once a week and tag teaming it with another commissioner or by myself even. I'm happy to do that. Is there a way we can kind of put a plan of action for public engagement, like signing up for certain events without breaking open meetings kind of thing?
Yeah, well, we can definitely figure out a way to do that without any OMA issues, definitely.
Cool, because I'd sign up for engaging in certain events or whatever if we wanted to put something out there.
Sure, yeah, I think that, Nick, we can talk about how we're gonna figure that out. Yeah, yeah.
And what about just walking around the neighborhood and knocking doors and stuff in the same type of way?
With a
right?
tablet kind of
With
thing?
a tablet and asking people if they want to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I
think
do
you're gonna
think
get a lot
we
of
can.
no's.
Pardon me?
I think you're gonna get a lot of no's.
That'd be okay,
Or something in your
right?
face, yeah.
I mean, if you're,
It's kind of a hard sell to walk up to somebody and ask them these questions and their input on it.
Well, I
That's a
think
millennial.
I think it's
Please
how,
don't approach
I
my
think
house
it's how you,
ever.
I think it's how you approach a person.
but in,
So that's why-
to your
that's why I think
point,
it's good.
Josh,
That's
it's
why-
not millennials we're gonna be
No, I
seeking,
know.
it's gonna be
But you're gonna go door to
seniors.
door, how are you gonna seek out
Yeah, that's why I
seniors?
think it's better to
Yeah.
piggyback.
I
Like,
would rather go to events.
go to the high rise, go to Hunter Center where the people go there for lunch.
Right.
Events and places, I think that, we've often had a computer here that people can use.
Sure.
And you could do that at the
The
library too.
library's a good one.
Yeah.
I think it's just less intrusive than going
Okay.
door to door. And that's just me. I know like
Yeah.
Charter and other, they may have done something differently to gather feedback. Personally, I feel like meeting them where they are and they're already kind of in a social setting is different than knocking on someone's door. I don't know what's a best practice, but that's just me.
Right. But, if you had a senior living area and you went to the community room or something
Right.
and there was something going on in there.
Bingo?
You ask
You
your
could,
friends and
yeah,
neighbors.
that I think might be the kind of environment where you could probably get some people to give you some feedback. So yeah, Nick and I will put together a little action plan for that and figure out a platform that could help people volunteer for certain things.
Joe, is there a plan or, I keep asking about plans, or a way we're also soliciting input from our city neighboring cities, what their plans are along the border,
Right, yeah, we do have,
Borders.
we've collected their, well, thankfully, we only have 2 neighbors, so, but we can also include Madison Heights, because they're nice and close. But yes, we do know what their future land use maps say, and we'll actually include that in the document of here's what's planned on the edges of our cities. So Royal Oak and Troy both have, their plans for what's going on right across the street from Clausen. And that's something that we always include in our plans is just, here's what they've got in the vicinity of our borders in their plans. So if they're looking at, a major industrial area or something right across the street from our city, it's something we need to be aware of so that we're not trying to put a bunch of single-family homes right next to it or something like that. But yes, and of course, they do also get copies of our plan once it's drafted, and they've been informed that we're planning as well. The notices of intent have gone out. So at the end, once we have a draft plan, Royal Oak and Troy will both get it, and the county gets it as well. And I know Scott Cree at the county really reads those things and actually will provide feedback on them. So we get the county perspective as well.
okay.
You good?
All right, yeah. I mean, I think that was a very good conversation, and we've got some work to do on our end, kind of build things out, and get this back in front of you, and get rolling. So, thank you.
Sounds like a plan. Agenda item number 9 is other business.
I had nothing else.
Does anyone up here?
I actually have a general question. I noticed at CVS that wall is crumbling there and there's some caution tape around there. Is there
Yeah.
anything that's happening to address that?
Somebody must have
I'm
drove
sure there
through it
is,
this
yeah.
last
Yeah, so there was a car accident there a couple weeks ago, and so our code enforcement is aware of it, but they had to have some processing done by the police department before they can have the property owner fix it. And so we're aware of it and kind of waiting for some of the internal procedures to complete before.
I didn't realize it was a car accident. That's an
Yeah.
odd spot for a car accident.
We've seen a little bit of everything.
Seen worse.
Yeah.
it's like
Right. Well, I thought it was like, well, that's a weird, it failed all of a sudden, like all at once kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
so
interesting.
it doesn't look like it would be from a car accident, but
Yeah.
that is what it's from. So,
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah,
I knew you'd be on top of it, Nick. Yeah.
just try to.
Anybody else on other business? Okay, how about the planners report?
I don't have anything else.
Nothing on planners report. 11, staff report and training opportunities.
Just want to say, first off, thank you guys for all of your cooperation tonight. I was looking for a different word for that, but engagement with Joe about the public engagement. I think we got a lot of good feedback, and we'll definitely get something good going for you guys and get some actual progress down instead of just some of this conversation. I had an updated report for you guys in the packet, and so if you guys have any questions, I am available for those. But before that, I just want to let you know that each end of June, the Michigan Association of Planning sends out to communities their active members on planning commissions and zoning board of appeals, and I got that notice, and there were a total of 4 people who are still correct from last year, just from turnover and whatnot. So probably in the next couple weeks, you'll be getting an email from the Michigan Association of Planning that you'll be a member. So we do pay for your guys' membership to be part of that organization. So you'll get their newsletters if you're not already now, and have more of an opportunity to see some other training opportunities that they have. And so if you do see something you're interested in and want to get registered for, and there's a price, please do let me know so we can get that taken care of. Yeah.
Just a note, I guess. I got an email from Michigan State about the Citizen Planner Program expiring at the end of this month. So I wrote them back asking to extend that. I wasn't able to go more than, I think, like 2, which is probably like 20% of the modules.
Okay.
So I don't want that to obviously expire because you guys, I think, cover the cost.
Yeah.
So if we could, I don't know if there's a blanket way, I don't know how my other commissioners are faring in that whole training program, but I asked them to like at least till September.
Yeah, I'll shoot them an
extend
email
mine.
because they shouldn't have sent that out that soon.
Okay.
So there might have been something internally that they had a problem with.
Just want to make sure.
Thank you for the heads up.
Yeah.
Yep, got the same thing.
More of an awareness for you guys. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't want it to all
thanks.
turn off or whatever.
I've done the first season, and
It's a slow process.
Yeah. I warned
Maybe a
you.
couple
I
months.
warned you all.
Anything else on staff report and training? Kill that. We'll go to legal update, but we do not have a lawyer, so I don't think we have any legal update. If anyone else has any comments before we close this thing down, now's the time.
That's why you were opening a pick.
Well, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn, as long as this doesn't need to be on
Support.
camera.
And motion support, roll call, please.
Mr. Harrell? Yes. Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
yes.
Mr. Kucera?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
And Mr. Colbert?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.